Welcome, everyone. Dr. Anthony Criniti IV here, also known as Dr. Finance. Welcome to the Dr. Finance Live podcast. We have an amazing guest here today. We have Jeff Hoffman. He is an amazing entrepreneur. So many things he covers that we're going to talk about today. The founder or co-founder of Priceline. Just so many amazing things he's got going out there. So a philanthropist, etc. So, folks, welcome again. We're going to welcome Jeff Hoffman. Welcome, Jeff. How are you, sir?
Thank you, man. I'm very, very happy to be here.
Likewise, honor to have you here as well, sir. So pleasure to meet you and would love to get to know your story a little better. But first, I would like to start out, if possible, can you give a quick 30-second snapshot of yourself, just like a condensed bio,
Sure.
And then we'll get into your story right after.
Yeah, sure. I am a longtime serial entrepreneur, started in tech. I've been involved in probably 8 different startups, and some of the ones I was part of, we were fortunate enough to really scale, which was the case with Priceline /booking.com, also one called ubid.com. So I built startups in tech for a lot of years. I was involved in that space, and then I got into kind of media and entertainment in film, television, music, and sports, where we've been building companies there as well.
Wow, that's incredible. And you spent a lot of time sailing around the world and traveling and visiting.
Yeah, traveling and exploring is my passion. So I am on the road a lot. We can talk about this later, but I'm chairman of something called the Global Entrepreneurship Network. And we work now in 200 countries. So as chairman of that, it gives me the opportunity to be out in the world all the time, which I really love.
That is awesome. I'm right with you with that, with the traveling thing. I think it's extremely, extremely important. So, all right, Jeff. So I'd love to start with your story, because you have such an incredible story, and you do so many things. I love to cover it all. So let's start with where were you originally from, and maybe you can tell us a little about your childhood, and we'll work upwards chronologically.
You got it, man. I grew up in the Arizona desert, the Phoenix area. A single mom, 4 kids. Mom was always working in multiple jobs, which is sort of where I got, not that I would have ever known the word entrepreneur, was sort of where I got the entrepreneurial mindset, because I never wanted to stress my mom out and ask her for money for everything, right? And like Anthony, I played every sport: baseball, basketball, football, and the season changes, and now you need football cleats, right? Or you grew a little and you need, new equipment. And I didn't want to ask my mom. So as a child in the Arizona desert, I would go door to door and find a way to make money. Knock on people's door. Hey, man, is there anything I could do that you would pay me for, that would help you out? Can I clean your garage? Can I mow your lawn? Something you don't want to do that you'll pay me to do. And so I kind of made that relationship between hard work and independence, because then I could just go buy my own cleats or whatever I needed, because I went out and earned the money and didn't have to bother my mom. So that was my childhood, growing up in the desert and being industrious so I could take care of myself and not stress mom out more.
Thank you. So, and I'm a Philly guy. I live in the concrete jungle of Philadelphia. So trying to understand the desert life, what was that like growing up in Phoenix? Now, I know Phoenix is a big city, but there are some.
It is now, yeah. But I was up in the north part, not in, in the city per se. But, it's really interesting, because everybody, it's like you said, the concrete jungle. Anybody I grew up with in Arizona wouldn't last 5 minutes in New York City. And anybody I knew in New York City or Philly would hate being in the desert. So it's all what you're used to. For us, it was kind of a freedom, because we would run off and hike. We'd climb mountains and we would hike, and we would play games out there, in the mountains and in the hills and stuff. So I grew up never being indoors. You wanted to be out, even though it was super hot. I was used to that heat. So we just loved being outside and exploring and climbing mountains and hiking, and the natural beauty of the desert is something I grew up with and I liked. Then I went back east to college, and people were like, "Didn't you just die of boredom?" And I said, hell no, we hiked and climbed and ran. So very much what you're used to. I love the mountains, and I still love going back.
Just out of curiosity, do you know the survival guy, Cody Lundin? He's from Phoenix.
I know who that is. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'm big. I'm big on survivalism. My last book, Survival of the Richest, I did a big overview of the survival movement, and Cody Lundin, I'm a big fan of his. He dual survivor. He's from
Yep.
Phoenix. So his survival expertise is the desert of Phoenix, well, Arizona. So, you know,
Hey, it's funny because the other day, somebody, I don't even know how this came up in conversation. Somebody made the comment about, does anyone know how to, oh, Jeff, I was giving blood for a blood drive, and somebody made a comment about knowing how to properly put on a tourniquet. And I said, well, actually, I've known that since childhood. And they're like, why would you know how to apply a tourniquet? And I said, because every kid in the Arizona desert is taught how to use a snake bite kit when you're a child. Put on a tourniquet and suck the venom out. So I thought that was funny. I was like, doesn't everybody know that? And no, you learn that because if you grow up in the desert, you're going to die if you don't know how to do that.
That's incredible. So yeah, you had to learn all these skill sets because you actually, so you're not from the concrete jungle, you're from the desert
Yep.
part.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's where I grew up and all the way till college.
Wow. So what kind of any interesting stories growing up in the desert that you want to share? Maybe just some things off the top of your head, just of that environment.
Well, there's sort of both the good and the bad. Like I said, the good was we were outside all the time, and unlike kids today with all the devices, and obviously there's a positive side to those too, but we had to invent. We're in the desert. There's nothing out there. We had to invent stuff to do and create games, right? And create scenarios. And so we were very creative because there's nothing out there and nothing to do. And I like that part. I see kids today that if you say, why don't you put down your devices and go outside? It's a gorgeous day. And they say, and do what? Because they need to be stimulated. And I was like, I don't know, come up with something. So we were, as kids growing up in the desert, we were very creative because you had to figure out your own stuff to do. And I really like that. The downside for me growing up, which has nothing to do with the desert, has to do more with, I grew up with a lot of people that Anthony, they didn't want anything else. They were like, I was like, man, what do you want to do? What do you want to do when you grow up? And they're like this. And I'm not judging anybody, but a lot of people I grew up with have never left the same sort of 5 square mile area that we grew up in. And again, there's no right, there's no wrong. I'm not judging them, but I wanted to go see, I had big plans, man. I'm going to go see the world and do all these things. And I grew up with a lot of people that were just happy to stay where they were and do this. And that made me have to be even more, I don't know, sort of go-getter. If I'm going to do something different, I'm going to have to break out of this mode that everybody's in. And it made it a little harder because instead of getting support, you get people that look at you like, what's wrong with you? This is good enough for everyone else. So I did have that. I didn't have all the support around me. By the way, give you an example. I went to a big public high school where football was way more important than calculus, even though I actually was doing both. And I wanted to go to, I had big college aspirations. I wanted to go to Yale. And when I told my actual guidance counselor, I want to go to Yale, she's like, people from here don't go to places like that. And I said, okay, but I need you to fill out this form. And she said, this isn't for people like you. And I was like, you're the guidance counselor. And you're supposed to be like pushing me. My mom had to call the school and say, could you please fill out the paperwork so the kid has a shot? So there was some of that in the environment that made me have to work harder, which I'm thankful for now to get where I was going, because I wasn't in an environment where everybody had big dreams.
Jeff, I like spending time like this, talking about this part of you, because we already know what you became. You're extremely successful. But to me, what I find the most interesting is how they got there, because that shows, especially, and I'm glad that you came from like a heart, you had a lot of struggles growing up, because that just that's a testimony to what a true entrepreneur needs to really live in life. And coming from the financial academic side, being a professor for 10 years, they don't teach this part. They just teach,
right,
you're investing and this, but they don't teach like what you actually got to go through to become at the level of yourself. So this is really fascinating, the fact that you came from this environment. You probably had a lot of struggles, and I sympathize with you too, because I had the same problem. Most of the people in my area in Philadelphia, they really haven't went outside the neighborhood, let alone other parts of the city. So, you know, it's a huge problem of wanting to be mediocre. It's contagious.
Yeah, people were just okay with that. And, you know, the lesson that I learned, though, was that if you really want something, whatever your dream is, if you want something in life, you can go get it yourself. But the key to that is you got to create value for somebody. No one's going to pay you unless you're doing something that's of value to them. That's the lesson I learned. Like, you know, I specifically remember knocking on a guy's door once and basically telling him this: your garage is a disgusting mess. And he's like, you knocked on my door to tell me that? And I said, you should clean it. And he's like, yeah, I know, I say that all the time, but it's such a mess now. It's too big of a task. I don't want to do it. And I said, I'll do it. And I said, you don't even park your car in there. If I clean your garage, you can park in your garage again. And I said, and he started thinking about it. And he said, that would be nice. And I said, you get rid of all this trash so you actually have some storage space. And he's like, man, I'd love that. And I said, what would you pay me to do it? And he gave me a number. And I said, this is a win. I am doing something that's valuable to you. Therefore, you are paying me. Therefore, the thing that I want, whatever, but that time it was a new bicycle, I can get. And I was like, this is a good formula. Dream big, right? I wanted this bike. That was my dream, right? I wrote this down, Anthony. It's something I've written down. It actually is on the board behind me, which is unfortunately covered because I had to do a TV segment. But I wrote down way back then. I'm like, this is my formula for success. Dream big, work hard, create value. And I wrote that down long ago when I was a kid. And it turns out that was actually the formula. Start with a big dream, work as hard as your dream is big, but you've got to be creating value for people in the world. And if you are, they pay you and your work turns into your dream. Pretty nice formula. But I figured that out as a kid because I was able to get funny because my mom's like, where'd you get that bike? I said, Mom, I did not steal it. She's like, how did you get a brand new bike? And I was like, I earned it. It was so funny because she was suspicious at first, but I did it myself, and that's a pretty good feeling.
How was it growing up being very different? Now, let me preface that question. So in a family unit, when you have certain people that are really, they're a very bright star, and they're very different than everybody else. You probably were doing tons of different things like the story you just told. How did your family view you? Like, what was their perspective of probably a lot of the odd things you were doing, because you are the foundation of what you became, and they didn't know it yet?
Yeah, I actually had from my siblings pretty good support, which was great. Right, my mom, by the way, my mom's attitude was always one of, why not? Right? Some people are doubt themselves and say, I don't think it, probably wouldn't be me. And my mom was a kind of a why not you? And her example was good. She worked hard and she stuck to her values. So if I said I was going after something that I really wanted, my mom would say, why not? Which was good, even though she was super busy, with all of her jobs and to help, her attitude was always, and I would watch how hard she worked for the things she wanted. But my siblings tended to be pretty supportive. I say, I'm going after this, whatever this next big thing is. And I think they were supportive of that. Now, in a lot of the people in the community, other friends and people I grew up around, when I started talking about super big dreams, I'm going to leave here and I'm going to go see the world. My childhood dream was to visit 50 countries across my life, not quickly. I was like, someday when I'm old, I will have visited 50 different countries that I've spent time in. That was a goal. When I told people that, in fact, people just laughed at me. In fact, I gotta tell you the Ferrari story. This will answer your question a lot. So I go over to my buddy's house. I'm probably only, 10, 11 years old. And I'm at my buddy Mike's house, and everybody, all the guys are all excited they're all buzzing over some poster he bought at the mall. So I look at the poster, The poster is a picture of a Ferrari. I don't even know what that is, right? We grew up, my sister said recently, this was funny, Anthony, she goes, you know what? We didn't even know we were poor, which is a tribute to my mom. My sister's like, when we were growing up, we didn't know we were poor because mom didn't focus on that. But I'd never heard of a Ferrari or seen anything. And so, and it was a picture of a Ferrari with a hot chick in a bikini sitting on the hood, whatever. That's a poster. And we were 10. In fact, at that point, we thought it was sort of gross that this girl in this bikini, her bare butt was touching that beautiful car, right? So we were looking at the car. I go home and ask my mom. I was like, Mom, can I ask you a question? And she said, what? And I said, what's the fascination? And she said, with what? And I said, it's a poster of something called a Ferrari. And all my friends are all fascinated by it. My mom said, the fascination is because it's the unattainable dream. And I said, oh, I thought Ferraris were real. And she's like, no, Ferrari's real. That's a real car. And she said, it's just that neither you nor anyone you know is ever going to drive a car like that. Right. So that one was like a $750,000 car or whatever. And I said, oh, okay. And then I said, wait a minute, stop. I said, Mom, does someone drive that car? And she said, yeah, they make those cars. Somebody drives that. It's just not anybody we know. It's not you or anybody you'll ever know. And I said, well, I remember thinking, Anthony, not with that attitude, right? If that's your attitude, you'll never have that. Now, I'm not a car guy. And this isn't a story of cars or material things. What happened was I said, Mom, could it be me? And she's like, son, you need to be realistic. 0.0001% of the population is going to drive that Ferrari. So, it's not going to happen. And I was like, but why couldn't it be me? So I go to school the next day. And I tell my friends, one day when I grow up, I'm going to buy a Ferrari. And just to see the response, and everybody bursts out laughing. I was like, why does everyone think that's so funny? They're like, dude, have you ever even seen one in real life? I said, no. And they said, never going to happen. So I remember thinking then, why do people let the world put a ceiling over you? Why are you letting everyone else tell you what your limit is? You shouldn't. So I went and Anthony to the mall and I bought that poster, same poster, and I brought it back to my room. And I wrote on the back of it a list of fundamental things that I believe to be true and that I wanted to do with my life. And what I decided was, as I move through my life, as I cross off each of these accomplishments, if I am right, and not everybody else, if my hard work determines my success, not other people telling me that, then I should someday technically be able to buy this car. It's on me, not the world, to tell me what I can do. So over the years, I was constantly crossing off. I achieved this thing, and eventually I bought the car not because I care about cars. I bought that car to prove it could to close the loop and prove it could be actually done. And it's kind of funny because many years later, those same friends came to visit me and everybody wanted to ride in the race car. And I just sat there for a minute thinking it's kind of funny because you're driving in a car that will never exist, right? It's never going to happen. I just wanted to share that story with you because your attitude determines your outcome. Everybody I grew up with accepted the limits of the environment they were in. I've never seen anybody do anything, so I don't believe it's possible, and that's just ridiculous. I just believe that I could go out and make my own path. So I don't want your listeners to ever let anybody put a ceiling over them. You decide your limits, nobody else.
Jeff, that's an incredible story, and it must have felt exhilarating to show them that car.
I'll tell you something. It's because it's a race car. It's super loud, and people my whole life, all I've ever heard is no from a lot of people in the world. Your dreams are too big. It'll never happen. No, you're not good enough. No, you're not going to do this. I've just heard no. Like so many people listening that have told somebody their dream and just got negativity. You hear no way more often. More people want you to fail than succeed because then it makes them feel better for not trying.
Yeah.
If you go out and start something and fail, they can say, see, I'm glad I never left my job. So they want you to fail. A lot of people. So I heard no my whole life. And when one of my old buddies I grew up with got in the car and I started it, he said, man, your car is so loud. And I said, Anthony, without even thinking, I said, yeah, it drowns out the sound of no. If I listened to you guys, we wouldn't be hearing this sound right now, pal.
That's funny. All right. Well, thank you, Jeff. So going back to your story, I'm sure you had a lot of entrepreneurship opportunities, probably from childhood to teenage life. What kind of jobs did you have, in that period? Like what kind of, or not jobs, but like maybe little entrepreneurship ventures you created?
Well, before I went away to college, I did
Yeah.
anything I could to make money. Cleaning pool, mowing lawn. Like I said, knocking on doors and seeing if there were things like cleaning people's garage or helping them take down a basketball, anything, goal, anything I could think of. I also, back then, when I was a kid, you did the, newspapers. So I even was a local newspaper boy. I would get on my bicycle at 5 a.m. before school with this giant mountain of newspapers and ride my bike to everybody's house and give them their morning paper. So I did all kinds of little jobs. At one point, I went door to door selling gardening stuff, just because so many people were out working in their yard. So I tried a little bit of everything when I was a kid. I didn't really start a company until I got to college, though.
Wow, that's interesting. So you had all these different experiences with, business, sales, all those little features that would eventually add up to a full-blown entrepreneur. So when you were ready to be an entrepreneur, you developed a skill set here, a skill set there, and they were building the foundation blocks to the full.
You got it exactly right, because you got a product and sourcing and marketing, right, and cash flow. All those things, and distribution and customer service, all those pieces, even if you're just out mowing someone's lawn, you get a taste of all those pieces. So yes, all that stuff was valuable to me when I started my first company. I sort of had a much better idea of what being an entrepreneur was all about.
Thank you, Jeff. So can you describe what was it like getting ready to go to college, and maybe talk about your college years, and then we'll go from there.
All right. Yeah. So I, the big public school I went to, not everybody had big college plans. A lot of people didn't go to college. They stayed local. Most of my friends stayed in Arizona. But I was interested in tech and future. And I read about this thing back then called AI. And I was like, man, I want to do that. And so I did some research. Well, there were a small number of schools at that point that had an AI program. And I wanted to learn about artificial intelligence. And one of them was MIT, but that was too tech for me. One of them was Stanford, but it was big, and I already lived in the West, and I was trying to get a new experience in my life, shake up my environment that, might shake up my mindset. And another one was Carnegie Mellon, which honestly, I just didn't know anything about it. But the fourth one was Yale. And I was like, I studied and I read, and I decided I want to go to Yale. So then I tried to figure out, what is the criteria for going to Yale? And I figured out what it might take to get in. And then I busted my butt in high school to meet the criteria that it would take to get into school like that. And I got in. I got accepted at Yale, and I went.
Wow.
But what happened was, when I got there, in the first day of classes, I got asked to leave the classroom because I had not paid. I paid every dime, we had. Our family had no money. And I got some scholarships and financial aid, but it wasn't enough. And they said, here's what happened, man. My big dream of going to Yale ended on day one. They're like, you can't go here because you didn't pay. And they're not doing anything wrong. Of course, that's the case. You can't go to a restaurant, eat a steak dinner, and say, you know what, I don't really have any money, so I'm just going to walk out. It doesn't work that way. So I wasn't mad at them. I was just crushed because my dream ended. And I actually sat outside on the stairs and cried for a little while everybody was in class. And then I sat there and I asked myself, you just going to sit here and cry, or are you going to do something about it? And I decided I wasn't going to go home. So the second day of class, I started a little software company. And I wound up running a software company in the basement at Yale and funding my entire education. So I graduated in 4 years and I paid for my own degree by
Wow.
building a software company and just hiring students to develop software that I was selling to businesses. So that was probably my first real startup. But same formula: dream big, work hard, create value. My big dream was crossing that stage at graduation and getting a degree from Yale, right? And the work ethic was, it's a hard school academically. So I had to work really hard on academics, but then I had to run a business on the side. So I just basically never slept. But then create value. We wrote software, business software, that I was able to go door to door to small businesses around New England and sell my product.
Jeff, I just want to pause there for a moment because 4 years in college is hard enough as it is. And I just can't imagine like what you had to go through in addition to that to actually fund yourself by creating this amazing business that helped pay for an expensive Yale education. I mean, that must have been a lot of time. Like you said, you probably didn't sleep. It was double, and you probably didn't have much. I'm just guessing here. You might not have had. You had to sacrifice a lot of fun time that typical college
Okay,
students
so
have.
that's a super important point because I love speaking to youth. I recently spoke at a middle school. I've got a high school coming up. I was speaking at Florida, University of Florida, the Gators Nation recently. I love speaking to young people. And when I do, that is a topic, what you just said. And the topic is that nobody gives you anything for free in life. You have to go out and earn it. And part of earning it is you're going to have to skip a few parties. So I literally tell the story you just said. I tell them that there were some Friday nights that my friends in college were like, woohoo, it's Friday. There's a big party, let's go. And I start to get up and I'd say, you know what? I made a commitment to finish this project this week. So you guys go on without me. I'm going to finish my work. And I had the discipline to skip a few parties and to get something done. Anything, nothing good in life really comes easy. You make sacrifices. That's just part of it. You trade off those things. But it was funny because I was speaking at a college one time and a kid during the Q&A, after I said that, he said, so your advice is we should just never party. And I said, well, wait a minute, I never said that. But before I answered, it's interesting because the student next to him grabbed the mic, pointed at me and said to his friend, he said, no, dude, the rest of that guy's life is the party. And everybody started laughing because people say to me now, you're so lucky you get to fly all over the world, right? I've been working on a sports deal recently with a lot of very famous athletes that I talk to on a regular basis. And, I was talking the other day on the phone with Peyton Manning. My friends are like, how is it you get to talk to Peyton Manning or whatever? And all these little things that people say, they say, I want your life. And I was like, okay, you just actually have to do the work. Everybody, there's another thing written behind me. It says, everybody wants to be successful just till they find out what it takes, right? Everybody wants your life. They just didn't want to do the work that you did. So the answer is, yeah, if you're willing to skip a few parties along the way, to be disciplined enough to get done the things you say you're going to get done, then there's a chance that the later part of your life, that's the party because you worked hard when everybody else was partying or whatever, and it pays off, right? Because then work, it was never about money. For me, it was about freedom. Right now, I'm free to travel around the world. Of course, that takes money. That's the byproduct, though. What I wanted was the freedom to go do the stuff that I want to do and travel around the world. But I had to earn that by working when everybody else was saying, I'll work on that tomorrow. That discipline and that sacrifice is part of the formula. But sacrifice, I don't even like that word because you get something for it, right? I did miss some parties along the way, but since then I've been to some amazing ones because of the fact that when it was go time, I was the guy that got it done. Hope that makes sense.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. That's a beautiful explanation. It's hard to digest for many, I think, but believe me, folks, if you got to listen to every word he's saying, because that's completely true. You do have to there are going to be parties you're going to have to skip for sure, and probably a lot of them in the beginning. So, well,
Yeah,
thank you, Jeff.
you got to pay your dues in anything in life.
Yeah. So post college, can you summarize what happened, how you eventually got to create Priceline and all that other great stuff you did?
Yeah, so I got it's interesting because the world tells you, go get a good degree at some good college, but here's why. You need to get, so you can get a good job and a good paycheck at a good company. That's what everybody focuses on. Go get a good job at a good company.
Right.
And that that I did. I got to be honest, man, I kind of folded to the pressure. So I went, and the degree I got when I was at Yale was computer science, software engineering. And I did that so I could get a good job. So I got an engineering job at a good engineering company, and I had a good salary, which was fine, except I didn't have a good life. I went to college with some kids who became investment bankers and were making 10 times more money than their classmates. And then I visited a few of them once, and they were absolutely miserable and hated their jobs and hated their lives. I was like, how is this the right answer? So for me, I got a good job and a good degree and a good company, and I actually just hated it every day. Didn't like my boss, wasn't motivated by the work, stared at the clock all day. And what I didn't have was a good life. And what we want people to get is a good life. A good job is a subset of a good life. It's not the driver. For most people, their job is this thing that prevents them from having the life they really want. And I just wasn't willing to accept that. Why can't you make a job out of the life you want instead of using your job as an excuse for not doing it? Why? My goal, I told you, was to see 50 countries in my life. You know why I don't see 50 countries? Because I can't afford to do it, and because I have to be in my cubicle every day to do engineering. So my job's the excuse. And people say, hey man, you got to pay the bills, got to go to work. So one day I started thinking, can't you do both? Isn't that the point of being an entrepreneur? Can't you design a job that lets you do the stuff you want to do in life and find a way to make money doing the stuff you actually want to do, not doing a job just because you have to pay the rent? And so I actually quit. And I left my engineering job, and that was a pretty tough time. Everybody was mad at me. My mom's like, what are you doing? Right? You have no salary, no benefits. Now you're broke and unemployed, which was true. But I was trying to figure out how to build a job and a living out of my passion, which was to travel the world. So I happened to be standing in the airport when I bought an airline ticket to go see a mentor. And the line back then, you had to check in at the counter. The line was like 1,000,000 miles long, and I stood in line so long that I missed a flight. And I was really upset. But what I realized then, excuse me, hang on a second, that this was actually my moment to do everything I just told you, to combine my passion and my dreams with making money.
Want some water, Jeff?
No, I got it. I'm all right. Thanks. Thanks. I just saw that you had some. Yeah, I'll take some of that. Just pour it into the chat window. Okay, so what I wound up doing was, after I missed a flight and standing there thinking, how the hell does it take? Why are we standing in line for 2 hours, right? For over an hour just to get a boarding pass, which is just a piece of paper they print out. And so I went home, and that Friday I started my first real company. And so the first company was, when you go to an airport, Anthony, and you check yourself in at one of those kiosks, instead of going up to the counter with a human, you go to a kiosk and get your own boarding pass and check in. That was my first invention.
You invented that?
Yeah, we created those.
Wow.
Started a company. We got some patents. We started selling them, and now they're in airports all over the world. But what happened was, that became my job. I would get a call every week from Lufthansa. Can you come to Germany to install those kiosks in the airport? And, then KLM, Royal Dutch Airlines, and all of a sudden I'm seeing the world and I'm getting paid to do it.
Wow.
Why? Because I created a job that I wanted by building a company that solved a problem in the industry I wanted to be in. I want to travel, right? And so the key is you got to become valuable to the people that you want to be around. I thought it'd be cool if all the world's airlines wanted to talk to me, because then they'd fly me everywhere. And they only do that when you have something they need, which is a solution to a problem.
Right.
So those kiosks, every airport and airline in the world was like, yeah, we love some of those. So all of a sudden I'm getting to see the world. I'm my own boss. I have my own company and I'm getting paid for it. So that was the first company. And then later we were lucky enough that we sold the whole company, and I was able to sell the company for millions of dollars. And I'm not a money guy, but before that I was 20 something years old and unemployed. And then all of a sudden, I've sold a company for millions of dollars and I'm getting to go fly around the world and do it. So that was the first business. I've been involved in a number of startups, but now you should be less surprised that I was into travel, right? Because that's what I wanted to do. Priceline was actually founded by a guy named Jay Walker in Connecticut. Jay had this idea for this name your own price, the reverse auction business. He had a patent on that. And Jay basically assembled a group of people to build the company. So in the, at the beginning, Jay and I knew each other for a while. And Jay had been reaching out to me saying, hey, let's go build this thing. And he assembled a team of people to launch. But even before I went there to be part of the Priceline team, I had a different partner in another private company, and we had done a deal with Bill Gates at Microsoft to build Expedia. So I was using my technology skills in the industry I wanted to be in travel, to solve problems. So we worked on the deal. We created Expedia, and then I went over and joined Jay and the team at Priceline. And that was an amazing ride because we happened to be, timing matters. We happened to be in the middle of that internet bubble where Priceline was a little tiny startup company. And then a mere couple of years later, it had a market cap of like $22 billion. Wow. In only, 3 or 4 years. That was a unique moment in the internet that if you were lucky enough to be there, it was a really fun and exciting time. Learned a lot. Nobody really knew when you were building internet companies, because the internet was new, how people were going to react to buying stuff online when they'd only ever bought stuff in a store before, because the whole concept was new. But learned a ton and really, really enjoyed it.
Wow. That's incredible. So your skill set, obviously you're an entrepreneur, which is many skill sets, but you also have a technical skill, which to do what you did, obviously you've got to know know a lot about computers, right? Like, how to do coding and all that stuff, or?
Yeah, that was what I studied. And I stayed up on that. So having an idea, right? If you think about a company like Priceline, it's really a gigantic computer algorithm, the whole company. Right, it's all sophisticated programming. So that was kind of the skill set that a lot of us had then, was we knew how to build tech. And remember, the whole idea of e-commerce was new then, how you bought and sold things online on the internet. But yeah, that was the background I came out of.
Wow, that's incredible. I didn't know you had a role in Expedia too, because I didn't really know much about Priceline until recently. Actually now for you, I always was an Expedia guy. And when you get hooked on one platform, you stay there.
Yeah. So and luckily, you are correct. And luckily, travel is such a big industry that there's room for lots of players. There doesn't need to be just one company. Expedia does well, Priceline does well, et cetera. So it's a big industry. But yeah, I was involved in building both of those platforms, and it was just, like I said, a great learning experience. Obviously, everybody made a lot of money from it, even though that's one piece, but another driver is impact, right? You got a chance to change the industry, right? Because before that, you had to call a travel agent or an airline or hotel to book something. And after we were done, everybody's booking their own travel on their computer. It's cool to have been part of something that impacted the way a whole industry works worldwide.
So you wind up selling Priceline. Can you tell us?
No, Priceline didn't. We never sold it. I sold the other companies I had. Priceline, we did an IPO. The company went public. So you don't sell the company, but if you're a founder of a company and your company goes public, then obviously over a period of time, you could just sell all your shares and leave. So that company did an IPO and went public.
Oh, are you still part of Priceline? Or?
I am not, but it is amazing today that the market cap of the company, the stock's at like $2,500 a share, and the company is worth like $107 billion today, which is pretty insane. But it was a well-designed company that's very profitable, and the market actually recognizes that. So I actually took a break after that startup. I had a tech startup that failed miserably in there. As long as your successes are way bigger than your failures, you're okay. I had an internet shopping company in that process too early. Before people were comfortable paying for things on the internet, that business failed. But then after the success we had at Priceline, I actually took a break to go into the entertainment biz, which is just a huge passion of mine. And I did a startup in music after that.
Yeah, we're going to talk about some of that really cool stuff in a little bit. I have some other questions for you. This is just really the story. All right. So any other points you'd like to add to the story before we get to specific
No,
questions?
that's really what it was. Just heads down building tech startups, and with a lot of focus on the travel space because we knew it.
That's awesome. Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it. Question about books. Do you have any books out there on yourself?
Yeah, I've actually only
that
ever
you're
written
writing?
one book that I wrote with a co-author, David Finkel, and our book is called Scale. And it's 7 things you got to get right if you want your company to really grow. I hear all the time people say, man, Jeff, I'm working harder and longer than I've ever worked before, and my company's just not growing. I can't get to the next level. So David and I wrote a book called Scale. And if these are the 7 things you got to get right, and we tell you how to do them, and if you do, then your company has a chance to really scale, to really grow big.
Wow. And that's called, what's that called again, Jeff?
It's called Scale. If they research the book Scale under my name, they'll find it.
Okay, folks, check that out. It's called Scale, Jeff Hoffman. And Jeff, yeah, I appreciate that. So if you have any other books in the future, I'd be happy to collaborate with you, give you an endorsement, whatever it takes to serve you, Jeff. I respect what you do a lot. So.
Greatly appreciate that.
All right, next question is, so figure, about 1 to 2 minutes each question. Got about 20 questions here, and that's the structure of the next segment of the interview. So what were some of your greatest struggles in life that you've overcome?
Wow, I would say probably the first great struggle was with being young and having big ideas and no one takes you seriously. Credibility would be the first one. There were things I wanted to do or things I said I could do, and people would roll their eyes. And so getting any credibility and therefore support was a big struggle my whole life. I was like, I think we could go do this, and nobody else thought it was doable. If I had told a lot of people we could build these kiosks and put them in airports all over the world, nobody believed me. So that was probably one of the biggest struggles I've overcome, is getting credibility before you've actually accomplished anything.
That is a brilliant one, Jeff. And I relate to you 100%. I mean, even like when I came out of college, I worked for Vanguard, the largest investment company out there. And because I didn't have gray hair, it was at the time, in my early 20s, even when I left the company, opened up my own business, people weren't attracting to me because they wanted to have a person who's in their 40s or 50s that looks like they're, just because they look a certain way, to manage their money. But this guy today, this guy right now, I still give that guy, like, I'll give credit to the younger me, and I will testimony for that guy. He could have worked anybody's portfolio, no problem. It's just he wasn't given that shot, right? So because of the gray hair thing, like that's what I call it, the gray hair syndrome. Like you don't look a certain way, they want you to be senior and stuff. So
absolutely.
Awesome point, Jeff. Thank you. So does money follow attention or excellence?
I have a thing also on my wall behind me. But I tell people this all the time. I tell people, don't chase money, chase excellence, because money follows excellence. I never had exit strategies, Anthony. I had entrance strategies, and I had excellent strategies. And if you built, literally when we built those kiosks, I'm just in my office one day, and there's a group of people in dark suits knocking on the door. Can I help you? Yes, we're a mergers and acquisitions team. We want to buy your company. My company's not for sale. They're like, we've been researching. You have the best products. Focus. People that are worried about chasing money, it prevents them from this fact. You are the only way you're ever going to get paid is if you create excellence anyway. So go out in the world and do something amazing and the money shows up. That's happened every time. I didn't worry about exit strategies. I worried about creating excellence, and people would come hunt me down and say, can we buy your company?
And Jeff, I just want to add a little bit to that. So I know that that's your line. The chase money follows excellence. The reason I incorporated this question is because a lot of major marketers out there, like Grant Cardone, his line is money follows attention, right? And I started thinking about when you said it, you said money follows excellence. I'm like, well, that's another way to look at it. But money follows attention is also true. But if you think about what you said, it's more true, because you'll follow excellence and then you'll get the attention, right? If you create the excellence, the attention will come and the money will follow both of them. But excellence.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what his means though. For example, there are people out there that get a lot of attention for doing nothing, right? Yeah. For making noise.
That's right.
People with money don't spend their money on those people. So yeah. I'm not sure explain to me, maybe I'm misunderstanding. What does money follows attention mean in this case?
Well, in this case, I'm not going to speak for him, but I think what he's trying to say, and a lot of people in that school of thought, is that the more eyeballs you get, the more money you make. Like, so if there's 8 billion people in the world, if you got 8 billion people to follow, you'd make more money, right? Like, that's the theory behind it.
Well, okay.
I don't really subscribe 100% to that though.
If you're, yeah, I guess if you're making money off followers, what do you make? So that's odd to me. It depends on what you're making money off of.
Yeah.
You could patent the cure for cancer and have 0 social media followers, but you're going to get really rich. So I'm not sure, because of the excellence, not the randomly the followers. So anyway, let's move on. I don't really know what that means.
Okay.
If you have a lot of followers and attention, but you don't actually create anything in the world,
yeah, I'm
not sure how you get rich from that.
That's why, yeah, I agree with your. I think you're saying is more complete.
You actually have to do something.
Yeah.
On the other hand, the Kardashians got rich, so I'm wrong.
All right, Jeff. Thank you. Excellent response. Excuse the pun. Excellent response. Tell us about your event. Okay, you already answered that. The airport kiosk. What is your biggest lesson? I put for co-founding. Well, you weren't the co-founder. For investing.
Yeah, but I've co-founded other companies.
Yeah. So what was your biggest lesson as an owner of Priceline.com?
Yeah, so for any company, we could just broaden that for any co-founders. But the biggest lesson for building any team is that the key to success is to surround yourself with people smarter than you. That's the big lesson I learned. And quit being blinded by your own brilliance. Our company, the ones I've been a part of that were successful, and definitely the case with Priceline, were successful because we went out and found amazingly smart people smarter than us, and brought them in. So that's what I think is the key to success, is surround yourself with people smarter than you.
Great point. Thank you, Jeff. All right. Now, I heard you talk about this with Pitbull. We're going to talk about it a little bit, but there was an interview you did with Pitbull, and you guys were talking about haters and stuff, and Pitbull went down this whole pipeline with it, which had some really good points. Are haters an inevitable part of the process of becoming a success?
Yeah, I most definitely think so, because it's part of the fuel. every journey has ups and downs. And every person that you see that might be strong and successful had some really weak moments where they were just down and they didn't think it was going to work and they didn't believe and they wanted to give up. Haters are the gasoline on your fire, right? Because there's times that you can just sit there and remember their words and it gives you the energy. It's the gas. Again, it's like throwing gas on a fire where you get up and you say, know what? I'm not going to quit here. I'm not going to stop. I can do this. So yeah, I think it's an important part of it because it lights a fire under you to get it done. And you're not doing it for them, but the truth is it is a driver. So yes.
Well, to follow up on that, why is it a fire to people like us? But it's not a fire to everybody. Like some people, it actually destroys them. They'll go sit in a corner and maybe even hang themselves. Like they can't take that comment. They can't take what was said to them. But people like us, we take it as fire, fuel. Like,
yeah, I mean, that's a DNA thing, right? People always ask me, a quick funny story, Anthony. I have friends that are athletes and entertainers. And some of my friends have done well in their field, right? I mean, if you think of a person like Michael Strahan, right? He sets the NFL sack record. He's a Super Bowl champ, a Hall of Famer. Now he does Good Morning America. Guy's very well accomplished. Another buddy of mine, Ray Lewis, is a Hall of Fame football player, 2 Super Bowl titles. Another friend of mine, Evander Holyfield, became the heavyweight champion of the world. So none of that's the point. The point is one day I was on the phone. We were working on a project together that Derek Jeter and I were working on. And Derek's won a few World Series. And Derek said jokingly, he said, excuse me, he said, Jeff, do you have to win some kind of world championship to be a friend of yours? And I got offended. I said, why are you saying that? And he said, I don't know, a lot of your friends, all have the trophies. And I started thinking about it. And I said, no, it's actually the opposite. And I said, I am attracted to a personality and an attitude that is probably going to win a trophy at what they're doing. See, that's the difference. You are exactly right. There's an attitude that winners have, right? In life, no matter what it is. And there's a personality type. That's why I say it's a DNA thing. Like, take my buddy Ray Lewis, for example. Ray's company is called No Excuses. Ray lives his whole life that way. When other people are saying something's too hard, Ray's the guy that's like, take a deep breath and let's just figure this thing out. His attitude, if you met him before he ever played football, it was a pretty good chance the guy would probably be holding up a Super Bowl trophy one day because of the way he is, the kind of person he is. The rest of it all sort of follows that. So anyway, I think you're right. There are some people whose DNA and their attitude is just different than everybody else's. A lot of people quit along the way, and some people suck it up and say, I ain't quitting, I'm going to figure this thing out.
Thank you, Jeff. Excellent point. All right. How powerful is it to wonder like a child?
Yeah, as you know, I am a big proponent. What happens to us as adults is we get so used to our surrounding that we stop really questioning stuff. And the world's biggest innovators, right before you, I just got off a phone call. I was just on a Zoom with Steve Wozniak, right? And Woz created something pretty cool, right? He and Steve Jobs created Apple. And Woz and I were just talking before this, and I was thinking about that, his personality type, right? Is he wonders about everything, curious about everything. And the reason that I use that analogy in my TED Talk was that 5-year-olds question everything. What is that? Why? How does that work? Why is that blue? Why do you have to open that? You say to a 5-year-old, put on your shoes. Why? Because we're getting in the car. Why? Because we have to go to the store. Why? Because we need food. Why? Because we'll die if we don't eat. Why? They never stop asking why. But then I started to notice that people like Woz, super innovators in the world, still do that. And so I started to realize that the more you wonder about and question everything in the world around you, the more likely you are to be really successful, especially as an entrepreneur and innovator. By the way, for me, I was standing in that line at the airport and asking the woman, saying, why are we all standing in line so you can use the printer? And she's like, next customer. And I was like, no, wait, I don't understand. Why is this the process? And she said, because I have to verify that it's you. And then I have to print out a boarding pass for you and check you into the flight. And I was like, why do you have to do it? Why does it have to be back here? Why can't we do it ourselves? Right? Why isn't there a way we can validate our own identity? Asking all these questions, and she was completely just like, next. But if I hadn't asked a million whys and wondered about why it worked that way, I never would have gone home thinking about it, and we never would have created that product.
It's Jeff, I just want to pause for a second. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Let's dissect that. So that woman, okay, you're asking all these questions there. She's probably your typical average employee, right?
Yeah.
So as you're asking her these questions, you're annoying her.
Oh yeah, big time.
You're making her think and do things she don't want to do. She don't want to think, right?
Right.
So you're on the opposite side of the entrepreneurship spectrum with her right there. And
you got it.
Why do you think most people are like this stereotypical entrepreneur, this stereotypical woman in this scenario, the stereotypical employee, where they don't want to hear questions, they don't want to think? Like, why is this?
Yeah, you know,
how'd you go from a kid to that? Like, she
environment.
was a kid one time, right? Asking questions. Like, what happened?
Yeah, I think a lot of that's environment for everybody listening to us today. Do you just get annoyed when your kid starts asking you a million questions, or you put down what you're doing, sit down and follow the whole conversation with them? I think it's environmental. I think that we could all do a lot better by letting our own mind wander sometimes, right? And by, if you're a parent listening to this, when your kid's asking annoying questions, instead of being annoyed, maybe look at them and say, this might be the next Steve Jobs or Wozniak, because my daughter's asking me a million questions. So encourage them to wonder about everything, because that's where great ideas and innovation comes from. So I think it's largely environmental. In school, we're told to just shut up, do our work, don't talk to other students, and turn in our test. That is not what creates innovation.
Beautiful, beautiful point. Thank you, Jeff. All right. What is it that attracts you to people like Pitbull, Evander Holyfield? I mean, you touched on it a little bit with Derek Jeter earlier, but like Pitbull, in the case of Pitbull, I really want to know the curiosity with Pitbull. I'm a big fan of Pitbull, but he's very different in what you're doing. Like you're a tech guy, and here he is, like, on this big stage.
Yep, no, you're right. And a lot of people, I had somebody say to me recently, because he's cool and hip, and they're like, how are you two friends? I was like, thank you for the insult, but we're actually very good friends. And the answer is, one of the things that matters most to me in life is giving back. In my business and startups, everybody talks about exit strategies. And the truth is, the only exit strategy that matters is to leave the world a better place than you found it. And so, what I love him for, and what our friendship is based on, is the schools that he builds and the charity work. We've done a lot of charity work together. It's because he, growing up as a Cuban immigrant child on the streets of, the worst streets of Miami, he knows what it's like, and he never forgets. And he basically goes on stage and sings so that he can make money to take care of these kids and families around the country. So what I'm drawn is to people who are actually committed to, using their success to make other people's lives better. I always tell people that success is not a destination, it's a platform, right? People think, okay, I've made it, I'm there. No, you're just starting now. If you achieve success, whether it's financial success, fame, or whatever, that is the platform that now enables you to make a difference in other people's lives. So I am attracted to people that care about using their platform, which includes money, to make other people's lives better. That's what he and I really connected.
Thank you, Jeff. And I gotta applaud you. And by the way, I think you're cool. So you are an amazing guy.
Kind of hard next to stand to dudes like that, though.
Yeah,
but he wins.
But we're all unique in our own ways.
Yeah.
That's the thing. So But I applaud you also about the charity thing, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. And we have a lot in common. That's why I'm attracted to people like you. There's so many people that I can spend my time with, but I like being around people with big hearts, because I could find a millionaire anywhere on the street and put them on the show, but I want to find someone that like was successful, been through the struggle, and has a good heart, because in the end, you can die a miserable billionaire and no one cares, right? Like,
Right.
or
You're
you can
exactly
actually
right.
have a purpose.
I unfortunately know too many people like that.
Sad reality. You would think that with all that money, they would have that lesson already figured out.
Yeah.
But all right, thank you. Appreciate it. All right. So is entrepreneurship the shovel used to dig a path to a brighter future? And I'm quoting someone that's on stage here.
You did a lot of homework. You sure did. Yeah. The reason that I wrote that one day was because it's not about, well, it's a real story. It was back during the Obama administration when Obama wanted me to go to Egypt and try to help them after their revolution by teaching entrepreneurship. And so I was kind of traveling around Egypt saying, hey, who wants to learn entrepreneurship? Who wants to be an entrepreneur? And nobody was raising their hand. And I was like, okay, I'm failing at my mission. No one is saying, yeah, I want to be an entrepreneur. And so I finally sat this one young Egyptian woman down and I said, all right, I'll stop asking you about entrepreneurship. And I said, but what do you care about? What do you want? And so she started telling me about her goals for how, post-revolution, she wanted to help build a better Egypt for her children to grow up in. And she had specific plans on how to do that. And she wanted to start a company to create some of these services. And I said, okay, so you don't care about entrepreneurship. You care about this list of things to creating a better future for children in Egypt. And I said, so let's think of it this way. Entrepreneurship is just the tool. The goal is these goals she had for kids growing up in Egypt, but the tool was entrepreneurship. So that's what I was saying is, if you're trying to build a better future, entrepreneurship is, you're going to need a shovel to dig a path. And entrepreneurship skills are a really good shovel. After I explained that to her, she said, all right, teach me the skills that entrepreneurs have so I can start my company. And by the way, since then, her name's Mai. Mai's company has served over 1 million Egyptian families. Egyptian families, yeah.
Wow.
Since she started that. So that's what it's about, man. Entrepreneurship is a tool set that you can use to design a better future.
That's awesome. Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate that. Okay. How does it feel to be well, I don't even know. Are you a billionaire? And that's totally you don't have to answer this question if you don't want, but how does it feel? A lot of people label you as a billionaire.
Yeah, no, I never really answer. I don't like people that talk about personal wealth and brag about it. So I don't usually answer that. But money in general, here's why it matters to me. It matters because I discovered that there are a lot of problems in the world that actually take money to solve them. And because I have it, I can actually solve problems that I'd be helpless to before. And the example, which Anthony, you probably heard me talk about, was when I was watching the news about a shelter for abused women that was being closed and all the women were being kicked to the streets because they ran out of money. And I was watching it on the news and I was like, man, they should help those women. And I had a life-changing realization then. My realization was there is no they. That's the biggest thing written on the board behind me. There is no they. They don't help those women, you do. And I was sitting there and I was thinking, oh my God, I have all this money. And again, I'm not a money-oriented person, but I was like, I'll just do it. I can actually afford to pay for this home for abused women. And I can afford to pay for them to get childcare and all those things. I wouldn't, if I hadn't built businesses and achieved wealth, I couldn't help people. So the answer to your question is, how does it feel? Everybody has, for people that have never had money, the first time you get money, you go, for me, it was a short spending spree. Because all of a sudden you're rich and you have millions of dollars and you can buy anything you want. And 10 minutes later, you don't want it anymore. It turns out that knowing you could have the stuff is just as good as having most stuff. I turned out, I ran out of stuff I wanted to buy because I don't really care about stuff. I just found that out when I said, oh, now I can buy anything I want. And then I turned out I didn't really actually want anything. I just wanted to be able to buy it if I wanted. But helping people, being able to go pay for houses for abused women, and being able to, to do all kinds of, we provided homes for lots of people. Right now I build orphanages and schools in Africa and other places. That is, to answer your question, that feels really good. And guess what? I can't do that if I'm broke. I worked hard to achieve wealth so that I can actually make other people's lives better. And so when I'm able to wire the money to build an entire school in Ethiopia or something like that, that feels really good. That's what I care about.
That's a brilliant point. In my last book, The Survival of Riches, I created a concept called the prosperity tipping point. So basically, at a certain point, I view finance different than most people. I see it as an extension of survival, and finance comes after this process. I call it a survival prosperity sequence. Survival, then you have finance, and then all these other sciences of wealth follow after that, like economics, right? So there's a concept called prosperity tipping point, when you have just enough amount of money, and everything else after that that's it. You don't need it anymore.
Totally get that. Survive, I really
right?
love that. Yep.
Yeah. So but basically from that point, my viewpoint is from that point on, that tipping point, it's all like marked for charity or giving, because you don't need it anymore. This is what you need to be comfortable, a comfortable existence and survive. Everything else is excessive to that, and you can give it to other people, a different cause. So what's your thoughts on that particular point right there? Like how, and it depends on every person. Like you will have a different prosperity.
I think you're dead on. Every person just needs to sit and figure out what enough is, so they know when they get to the tipping point.
Right.
But I love the way you explain that, and I completely agree.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Why do you like to give back so much? Let's talk about your charity. I mean, you touched on it a little bit so far, but what's really the driving force behind that? I mean, is this something from when you were a kid, maybe because you grew up, you didn't have it, and you know what it feels like to not have money, and you want to help other people?
I think honestly, it's just that proverbial, the power of giving is so much greater than the power of receiving. Being able to give people, and I think part of it wasn't so much growing up. It was more that when I got to travel the world and see the way the rest of the world lives, right? The people that are viewing this podcast right now don't live in a dirt village, probably, with a house made out of mud, no electricity, no running water. And they just work in the sun in the fields all day, because otherwise, if they don't grow food, they don't eat. That is not most of us experience. But when I started traveling the world and seeing the massive percentage of the world who live every day as a struggle and don't always know where their next meal is coming from, and there are people, I've met plenty in the US as well, I started just feeling that injustice. The world's unbalanced, right? I've been very blessed to have success more than once, and there's people that don't know if they're eating today. And I was like, how does that make any sense? So it was my travel that exposed me to, oh my God, the whole rest of the world doesn't live. When you get out of your bubble in the city you live in and go see the world, you wind up realizing there's a lot of people that can't help themselves. And if you realize you could help them, then I think you're obliged to do that. So that's really what drove it. Is I'm standing here, I could help. How could I possibly walk away then without helping these people?
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate that. And Jeff, if you don't mind, this is totally your podcast, but I know that the show's on you. I just want to pause for a second, tell you a quick story, because we resonate a lot. When I was, so I grew up in a real tough area in South Philadelphia, and grew up relatively, lower to mid income, different brackets. My 4 grandparents, they died broke. So when I left to go to college, because that's all my parents wanted me to do. They wanted me to go to college. My best friend just died. I was 18 years old. And, for the next year and a half, in college, I was just wandering around, still kind of lost. And I found this program called Semester at Sea. And I went on this boat, and it actually circumnavigates the globe. And you go to all poor places, all the poorest places in the world. And when I came back, I had the same epiphany you just said. Like, I thought I grew up bad, and I saw like villages in Africa and India and stuff, and people like handing their babies to me when I got off the ship in India. I'm like, you could do better than me, they said. This one lady said. I said, what?
Wow.
I'm just a 19-year-old kid. How can I do better than you? And I didn't get it. And I'm still trying to figure that out. But like, it was one of those moments that just transformed my whole life. And that's why I share a mission with you, because that was my light bulb when I saw that. And that's why I want to give too, for the same reasons. What is it about that experience, that traveling experience, seeing poverty like that, that just snaps people out of whatever
Yeah,
reality?
it really does, because it's really hard to go back to your warm, comfortable bed, right, when you just pass people that don't even have one. So that has been really a driver for all of our charity work, is that trying to bring people up to as high of a level as we can.
Thank you, Jeff. All right, Jeff. What is the difference between $2.99 and $300? Maybe a minute or so.
Yeah, so I'm glad that you asked that story. There's a big no $2.99s on the wall behind me too. And it's all about the fact that the most successful people in the world, they don't look for shortcuts. I literally had somebody once say to me on a newscast, the news reporter said, "Mr. Hoffman, what's the secret to success?" And I was like, the secret to success is that while everyone else was reading all these books trying to find the secret, I was working, right? The secret to success is understanding there's no secret. You actually have to go do the work, right? There aren't shortcuts. You have to actually go do the work. And I won't take the time to go through the whole story, but the $2.99, $300 story was the story of one of my athlete friends, heavyweight champion Evander Holyfield, when he was doing an exercise that he does 300 times a day, and I was counting. And at $2.99, I told him done 300, and he said, "Was that $2.99 or 300?" And I said 300, and he said, "I think I only did $2.99." I was like, "Oh my God, what's the difference, right? You do 300 of these a day." And he basically looked at me and said, "The difference." And I said, "Yeah." He said, "The difference between $2.99 and 300 is the difference between being the heavyweight champion of the world and every other fighter." And I just got goosebumps, man, as I sat there and I realized he's right. Because in anything in life, when you look for shortcuts and the easy way out, somebody down the street is finishing. They're doing 300 and they're going to beat you. It applies to everything you do in life. Answer this question: did I really do the best I could? Did I really finish? Or did I just quit a little early because that was good enough? Winners don't accept good enough. They finish strong every time. So I have a thing in my office on the wall that says no $2.99s to remind me every day, whatever I'm working on, give it your best. Don't finish $2.99 out of 300 and say, that's close enough. Because close enough is not what makes winners.
Jeff,
so that's what that story is.
I love that story so much. I probably would never get tired of hearing it. It means, and you can take it to so many levels too. Like, it's one of those simple stories you can just, really deeply analyze.
But it changed my life to that kind of thinking.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeff. All right. So we're making good progress here. What is the common element of successful people? Maybe a minute or so.
Yeah, I think one of the most common elements of successful people is, there's going to be two. One is listening skills. Successful people listen well. Whether you're an athlete that's coachable versus one that's not coachable, whether you're a founder of a company that's coachable, whether you're building, whatever your own business is, and you're actually listening to your customers instead of talking. So listening skills, I notice, is such a common element among successful people, is they hear. They listen and they hear and they adapt. Where a lot of people, when you're talking, aren't really listening. They're just waiting for you to finish so they can say what they want to say. That's not listening. I think that's probably one of the biggest ones right there.
Thank you, Jeff. Excellent. I agree. All right. I don't know if you've been on Clubhouse a lot. I know you're going to be going on doing a stage Friday night a few weeks from now. By the way, folks, check it out. I'll be posting all across my social media. We'll have the time all planted there. But if you have been on there, which I think you've been on there a little bit, what do you think about Clubhouse? I'm sure you're aware of it. Favorite stages there, et cetera. Just the idea. Now, Clubhouse has changed my life. It's changed people like Forbes Riley's life. It's amazing technology, but it doesn't work for everybody.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I have any favorite stages because I have a light. I'm not on it all the time, but I've definitely had some great experiences coming on Clubhouse. I have loved the depth and the breadth of the people, such a great mix of people. And because, you know, when there's a Clubhouse room, when there's a talk, it's a topic. So the people that showed up there were interested in that. So, you know, you're talking to a bunch of engaged people that actually care about that topic. And that's what makes the Q&A. That's why, you know, Clubhouse sessions go on for hours into the night, because everybody's engaged and they're asking good questions. And, you know, eventually you have to it's a good thing when you're doing something, you have to force yourself to stop because everybody's so into it. So I'm a big fan.
That's really good, Jeff. I'm really, really excited to introduce you into the community as well. So we had, I had the longest, you were probably speaking in one of the former clubs I was in. I built this club from 40 to 100,000 members. We had the longest running room on Clubhouse at the time. It was 84 days straight, and
wow.
Impacted over 1 million people.
What was that one called?
Yeah, the room title was called How to Run a Successful Business. And but I run my own club. I run the Friday nights for my own club now, but it originated on a Friday that the first day of the longest running room on Clubhouse began on a Friday. That's how I got stuck with the Friday thing. So yeah, but definitely looking forward to having you there. We have at least one main guest speaker every Friday, and a lot of the biggest influencers there. So, and they could run for a long time. Imagine that room, 84 days, 24 hours a day. That's incredible. So I didn't do it myself. We had like 150 moderators. They called me the fire starter, but it takes a team to run that kind of project. So looking forward. Jeff, you're on mute. I don't know.
All right, this was buzzing. I'm going to have to wrap up. I didn't realize I'm backed up against another appearance that I have to do.
Okay. All right. So we have about like maybe 10 questions left. Could we do a minute each?
I got about 5 minutes. You want to just do these another time? I can do it later today. We can finish them. I only have about 5 minutes because I have to go live on something. I didn't realize it was starting.
Yeah. Well, how long is that going to be for?
Well, the problem is right after that, I have to leave. So I'm going to be gone for the next couple hours.
Okay. All right. Well,
I have no way around it.
I'll just, we'll do another one another time. I'll just pick a few questions.
Okay.
All right. So maybe about 30 seconds each. All right. Or less. Can one book change the world?
Absolutely. I think one book can change the world in the same way that one idea can change the world.
All right, great. What role has networking played in your life? Has it been?
Networking is massively important. I mentioned before that the key to success is to surround yourself with people smarter than you. You got to know those people and find them. So network all the time, everywhere. Huge believer in it.
Thank you, Jeff. Is mentoring important? And who are some of your mentors?
I actually just posted a thing on my social media about the critical importance of mentorship. You should have a mentor and you should be a mentor. I've had various mentors throughout my life that probably have no idea how valuable they were to me.
Thank you, Jeff. What are your favorite financial books? Maybe 30 seconds or less.
I would have to go back through. I'll have to pass on that one because I just haven't looked at any of them recently. And so I'd have to go back through and make sure I'm getting titles right.
All right, no worries, Jeff. By the way, I want to send you a free copy of my 3 books.
Oh, thank you so much.
Okay. And do we need money to survive?
We do. I mean, we need, money is the current primary currency of our barter system, but that's the way humanity works. People trade things and services. So, it's really tough. So I don't know if you meant that as we as a human race or we individually, but individually you do. Somebody within your network or your world has to have some kind of tradable currency. It's all a big giant barter system. Money is just the root of it.
Thank you, Jeff. Now, as an extension of that question, is finance necessary for everyone? Finance, the science of we're talking about wealth here, managing wealth.
Yeah, I think a huge problem in our world is a lot of people are in bad financial situation, which causes them everything from severe stress to massive health problems because they have no financial literacy. So teaching people better finance and, as you're making money, having a professional manage finance for you instead of trying to do everything yourself, critically important.
Thank you, Jeff. 3 questions left. How important is having a purpose in business, and what is your purpose? Maybe 30 seconds.
I think that purpose-driven businesses far outperform paycheck driven businesses. My purpose ever since that women's shelter I told you about has been to build profitable businesses so that we can go make other people's lives better.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeff. And what would you like to accomplish in the next 10 years or so, and why?
I would like to figure out how to better impact our educational system so we're introducing young people and kids to the entrepreneurial mindset at a much earlier.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeff. Last question. We did great. Look at that. What would you like to be your legacy to this world?
I would like my legacy to the world to be that there's somebody somewhere, hopefully more than one, who did something amazing with their life, and they were given that opportunity because of our hard work. It might be, I have an orphanage in Uganda. It might be a young girl in that orphanage goes on to make a major medical discovery, and she would have never had that chance if we hadn't worked hard, built profitable businesses, built an orphanage, and sent her to school. So I'd like my legacy to be lived through somebody else that we gave opportunity to.
Thank you, Jeff. That was a brilliant response, by the way. I appreciate you, Jeff. So we're going to close out now. So we did 10 questions in like 2-3 minutes.
All right, that was good, bud.
All right. So I want to thank you for coming on here, Jeff. Appreciate you so much. I'm looking forward to having you on Clubhouse pretty soon.
All right, I can't wait.
Before I close out, any last minute thoughts? The floor is yours. You want to share in a book, or you tell us about a new project you're doing?
Yeah, I just mentioned the charity. Yeah, I'll just mention that my charity is called World Youth Horizons. It's worldyouthhorizons.com. We are focused on giving every kid a chance at a better life through getting them in school. But first, we get them safety where they live. We get them a place to live, especially orphans and children that just live in severe poverty. We get them medical and healthcare and food. Then we send them to school. So once a kid is healthy and safe, you can get them in an educational system, even if we have to build the schools like we did in Ethiopia, so that children everywhere in the US as well have a chance to improve their own lives. And it starts with a good education. So if you want to get involved or help, visit us at worldyouthhorizons.com.
worldyouthhorizons.com, folks. Check that out. All right. Well, thank you again, Jeff.
Thank
folks,
you, buddy.
We're going to close out now. So I appreciate everyone. You've been watching the Dr. Finance Live podcast. Here's the website for more info, drfinance.info. We're going to post this podcast everywhere. And then, of course, check out the 3 books on the window as well. Appreciate you all. Thank you. See you on the next episode. Don't forget to follow, like, and subscribe Jeff's social media as well. Jeff, you're all over social media, right?
Yes.
Okay. Excellent. All right. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Bye-bye now.